Hi, it's Justin at Tarot Fire. I want to talk a little bit about the history of tarot, what we know, what we believe, and what some misconceptions are. It's commonly believed that tarot started back in the 14th century. The tarot deck came from the playing cards that we now use today. The playing cards that we use today were actually created before the tarot deck. We don't know how, but at some point, someone began to use tarot cards as a method of doing predictions or divination. They assign meanings to the cards that we don't know when that happened or why, but the meanings that they applied to the cards were always about the fundamental characteristics of human life, how we behave, how we interact with each other. The concepts are concepts that have been around forever, since mankind has existed. They are concepts of psychology, concepts that go back as far as the Bible and maybe before. In, I believe, the 1500s, an Italian wealthy nobleman had a tarot deck created, and he had an extra 22 cards added to it called the Major Arcana. And this deck was a beautiful handcrafted deck, handcrafted by an artist. It was embossed with gold leaf, and in its day it would have been a masterpiece. It would have cost an absolute fortune for this nobleman to make this deck. And there are parts of that deck that still survive today. There's a pretty big gap in history from when the first Italian tarot deck was created to when it became more popular in the 1800s. But there was a French seed salesman that started to study the tarot deck, and he's actually the first person that is recorded to be a professional card reader. And he assigned more clear meanings to the cards from what he felt, and began doing readings, and it was very popular. That deck continued on, and in fact that deck can still be purchased today. It's still in print. Copies of that have survived. Then around the mid-1800s, a man by the name of White started studying tarot and other things in occult and mysticism. He was a Christian originally, so a lot of his interpretations are influenced by Christianity, and that's why you see a lot of medieval and Christian themes in the White tarot deck. This man was he studied the occult and mysticism to a great degree, and he joined a group called the Golden Dawn back in the late 1800s. And the Golden Dawn believed in magical rituals and spells and things like that. It's kind of what we would consider to be the start of witchcraft. Well, he was in this cult for quite a while and decided that he did not agree with the magic part of it. He felt more in touch with spirit than physical magic, and he went back to the Christian church. But he did create a tarot deck called the White Tarot deck, and that's the one I like to use, and assigned meanings to it that, again, are fundamental principles of our human psychology. And He wrote a book on how to do different readings that will guide the person being read for through an understanding of their situation. And these are principles that can be applied to anyone. And that deck was done was published in 1910. And since then, many decks have flourished based on his deck. But he ended up going to creating a new faction that broke away from this Golden Dawn, and the Golden Dawn basically fell apart. There was infighting and disagreements about how things should be run, and he didn't like the direction they were taking. He didn't like the magic part of it. So he ended up going back to Christianity. He was Catholic, and kind of formed his own opinions about spirituality and there being a spirit inside of each one of us that yearns to be reunited with God someday. And his view of spirit and afterlife is one based on peace, love, and harmony. There was a student of his early on in the Golden Dawn years that was named Aleister Crowley, and Aleister Crowley was not a good guy. He created his own deck that is a dark, sinister, creepy deck. And his is based on an older interpretation or belief of where tarot came from Egypt, from this book called the Book of Thoth. And Aleister Crowley sought guidance from Wright on matters of spirituality and spiritualism, and Wright told him basically that he didn't believe in the magic side of things, and that he believed in a deeper connection to spirit, and that casting spells and performing magic rituals was not right. That's not what he believed in. Well, Aleister Crowley did not believe that, and Aleister Crowley kind of became the father of Satanism. So you'll see a divide in tarot decks around the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s. There's kind of a split where you'll see these darker elements enter tarot decks, and I don't like that because they put a negative light on everything. They kind of cast a dark shadow on everything, and they're just creepy images on those cards, and I don't care for them at all, and I don't believe in the philosophy of the guy that had them drawn up. He drew up his own interpretations that are very similar to Wright's, but again, they're just dark and sinister, and I don't care for them. It's just not my cup of tea.